The Application Lifecycle Risk Management Podcast, Episode 36, Responsive Web Design Conversion. Several weeks ago, I started the process of converting my blog to a responsive design. At this point, it's mostly done, but it is done enough that I can tell you the process I went through to get the site converted. I was surprised by how easy the process was, but I guess I was lucky because the theme I started out with was already following a number of best practices. So, to start out with, if you want to move your site toward responsive design, there are some prerequisites that you'll need to pay attention to. First, before you do anything else, you need to make sure your theme is not using tables anywhere. If you are, the first thing you will need to do is to convert your theme from tables to divs. The CSS world has been telling you this for years, and now you see why it's true. Frankly, if you're using tables instead of divs for your layout, you're probably better off just starting over. Second, you need to ensure that you don't have any CSS embedded in your HTML, or even worse, style attributes in your elements that are going to get in the way of your design. While it's true you can override these with JavaScript, the less of this you have to do, the better. So clean that up now. And then third, you need to think about what you really need to show on the page and what can be hidden. Sidebars are good candidates for hiding since they aren't your main content. On my site, I have two sidebars, one on the left and one on the right. I've decided that the right sidebar is more important, so I've hidden the left one for small screens and both for tiny screens. You might decide to move them to the bottom instead, but you might find that more difficult than hiding them. With the prerequisites taken care of, let's look at some HTML. You'll need to add the following meta tag into your head area of your HTML. Meta, name equals viewport, content equals width equals device width, comma, initial scale equals 1. I'll let you search for the technical explanation of what this actually does, but what I'll tell you is why you need it. If you don't add this, then when you go to view your website on the iPhone and other browsers that are looking for this tag, you'll see the full site scaled down to fit on the phone instead of the adaptive rendering you were probably expecting. That is, you'll have everything working on your desktop so that it works on various screen sizes as you would expect, but when you try to render it on your phone, it will scale the full version of the site to fit within the screen. Most of your changes will be in the CSS, and this is where a lot of the magic happens. The first change you're going to want to make to your original design is that you're going to want to make all of your width information percentage values instead of hard pixel values, or EMs if that's what you use. Of course, your outer div's going to need to be 100%, but if you do that and you view your site on a large monitor, your site's going to be really hard to read. So to fix that, add the max width attribute to the CSS definition for that element. And now we have to add rules to tell the browser how to render the page at different resolutions. And to do that, we use media tags. You may have thought that media tags were just for styling the printed version of your website, or for telling text-to-speech engines how to read your page. But they're also useful for telling the browser what rules to use for the various screen resolutions. You can use media tags for screen in the same way that you use media tags for print, either by specifying it in your CSS or by specifying it in your link statement in the HTML. I chose to put them in my CSS because I wasn't adding that much information, and I compressed my CSS anyhow. The basic syntax looks like @media screen and then some rule. It is the rule bit that gets confusing. So the rule bit looks like max width 600 pixels. What this says is only apply this CSS to screen sizes less than or equal to 600 pixels. That is, only apply the CSS to a screen whose max width is 600 pixels. If you're going to mess up anything, this is where it'll be. There's also a rule for min width, so you can say something like max width 600 pixels and min width 300 pixels, which would only apply the CSS to a screen width between 300 and 600 pixels. Now, you might be inclined to use a rule like that, but what I've found is that most of my CSS is additive. That is, the rules I applied to max width of 900 pixels, I also want applied to max width of 600 pixels. I just want additional rules applied to max width of 600. So, I tend to just stack them instead of making a separate rule set for each resolution. Other than removing the sidebars, you may want to also adjust font sizes and banner sizes based on the size of the screen. That's what I did here. You'll notice that the banner area shrinks as the screen gets smaller. Okay, so now you've got your screens scaling nicely, but you may notice one final issue. All of those images you have on your site are all a fixed size. Some of those you might be able to fix by using CSS, but in my case, the images I had the most trouble with were the images that show up at the top of the post. So in my case, I wrote some JavaScript to scale them to fit the width of the container. I still have to modify the code in some of my older posts to work better with the JavaScript I wrote, but for the newer post, this is all working pretty well. I've been thinking about making the scaling code work as the screen size changes, but that's a whole lot of work for something most people aren't even going to use. If you do decide to change the screen size, and you see the images bleeding over the width of the container, refresh your browser and the images will scale. Don't forget to rate this show in iTunes and Stitcher. What's Stitcher? Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favorite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment, and sports shows. Create custom playlists. Available on the iOS, Android, and Nook. No downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And for the links to items mentioned in this podcast, make sure you check out my blog at blog.dmbcllc.com. A link to this article is in the show description.